The park was full of energy that afternoon. Families gathered together, waving American flags while children laughed and ran around. A stage had been set up near the center, decorated with red, white, and blue ribbons. Cameras clicked from every angle as people waited for the president to arrive. The sun was shining bright, and the mood felt almost like a festival. Excitement grew louder when the motorcade rolled in black cars with flashing lights pulling up near the crowd. Everyone leaned in to catch a glimpse of President Trump. But for 8-year-old Sophie, this event wasn't just about seeing a famous leader. It was her one big chance to ask a question she had been carrying in her heart for weeks. Sophie stood close to the front, her small hand tightly holding her mother's. Her light brown ponytail bounced each time she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Around her, people cheered and clapped, but she stayed quiet, her wide green eyes locked on the stage. She wasn't here just to watch like everyone else. She had something important to say. Her heart pounded in her chest as she waited for the right moment. When the president got closer, her mom leaned down and whispered, "You can do it, sweetheart." Sophie nodded slowly, her fingers gripping the hem of her yellow dress. She took a deep breath, knowing this might be the only chance she'd ever get to speak up. President Trump moved along the rope line, shaking hands and flashing his well-known smile. People reached out, trying to get a quick handshake or snap a photo. The excitement in the crowd grew louder with each step he took. Secret Service agents watched closely, staying alert as always. Sophie's eyes followed him the whole time. She could feel her heart thumping as he got closer. Then, almost like he noticed her before anyone else, the president stopped. His eyes landed on the small girl standing bravely in the front. The crowd began to quiet down, curious about what was happening. Sophie felt frozen in place, but she knew this was her moment. Sophie looked up at the president, her tiny voice breaking the silence. "Mr. President?" she said, just loud enough to be heard. President Trump bent down, meeting her at eye level. "Well, hello there," he said kindly. "What's your name?" "Sophie," she replied, her voice shaking a little. "That's a beautiful name," he said with a warm smile. "What's on your mind?" Sophie took a deep breath, holding onto her dress tightly. "My brother, Noah, is really sick," she said. "He needs a special doctor, but we can't afford it. Can you help him?" The crowd went still. Even the breeze seemed to pause. All eyes were on Sophie, and for a moment, time felt like it had stopped. President Trump didn't speak right away. His smile faded, and his face grew serious. He looked at Sophie, then glanced at her mom, who stood nearby with tears welling in her eyes. Slowly, he rested a hand on Sophie's small shoulder. "That's a very brave question, Sophie," he said quietly. "You must really love your brother." Sophie nodded, her eyes shining. "He's my best friend," she whispered. The president took a deep breath, his voice softer now. "I want you to know that we're working hard to fix healthcare for families like yours," he said. "And I promise we're going to do everything we can to help Noah." The crowd stood still, many wiping their eyes as they watched the moment unfold. Trump looked at Sophie again, his eyes filled with kindness. "You're a very brave girl," he said, his voice gentle. "Braver than a lot of grown-ups, I know." Sophie's face lit up with a big smile, and before anyone could say anything, she threw her arms around the president's neck, hugging him tightly. The crowd gasped, then began to clap softly. Trump chuckled and patted her back, clearly touched. "You're something special, Sophie," he said as she pulled away, still smiling brightly. Then, standing tall, he looked at the crowd. "This is why we're here," he said, his voice firm. "To help families like Sophie's. We're going to make things better for all of you." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound filling the park. Some people wiped away tears, touched by the moment. Sophie's mother stood there, hands over her mouth, trying to hold back the tears that kept spilling down her cheeks. She looked at Sophie, then back at the president, filled with gratitude. Trump gave a nod toward Sophie's mom, a silent promise of support. Sophie stood tall, her smile glowing brighter than ever. "Thank you," she whispered under her breath, knowing her brother would get the help he needed. As the motorcade began to pull away, the energy in the park was still buzzing. But for Sophie, the day had already been changed forever. As the motorcade drove away, the park was still buzzing with excitement. But for Sophie, everything had changed. She looked at her mom, who was still wiping away tears, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. Her brother Noah now had a real chance. That's all that mattered. The promise the president made was more than just words, it was hope. Sophie's heart was full, knowing that her brave question had started something that could change her family's life. She didn't need to ask for anything more. Her brother would get the care he needed. And in that moment, Sophie felt like she had done something truly important. As the event wrapped up, people were still talking about Sophie and her courageous question. Her story spread quickly, shared by those who had witnessed the touching moment. Her name became a symbol of bravery, and her question sparked a conversation that no one would forget. Sophie's moment had touched the hearts of many, and people from all over began to reach out, offering support for her family. She never expected this kind of attention, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that her brother, Noah, was one step closer to getting the help he so desperately needed. And in Sophie's eyes, that was all the recognition she needed. As the event ended, Sophie stood there, looking around at the crowd, still feeling the energy of the day. She never imagined that her simple question would cause such a wave of support. The president's promise was more than she could have hoped for. She knew that her brother, Noah, would get the help he needed. But what really stayed with her was how much love and kindness she had felt from everyone. Sophie had started with just one brave question, but what came from it was hope, change, and the belief that one small voice could make a big difference. Sophie's story stayed with everyone who had been there that day. People couldn't stop talking about how a brave little girl had asked a question that changed her family's future. Her actions sparked something in others, inspiring them to step up and support families in need. Sophie never thought she'd be a symbol of hope, but that's exactly what she became. The impact of her question went far beyond that day at the park. It was a reminder to everyone that sometimes the smallest voices can create the biggest changes. Sophie's legacy would live on not just in her family, but in the hearts of everyone who witnessed her bravery.